Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Episode 120 today. And Mark, I was reading something the other day about developing new medicines, how incredibly complex it is, simulating protein folding and all that jazz. And it got me thinking about areas where we just need, well, more computing grunt, you know?
Oh, it's funny you mention that, Jenny. Because that's precisely times where things like quantum computing could eventually make a huge difference. The complexity in simulating molecules, drug interactions, it's just immense for even our best classical supercomputers today.
Right. Quantum computing. We hear the term thrown around a lot. Sometimes it still sounds like pure science fiction, doesn't it? But things are actually happening, aren't they? I feel like I saw some headlines recently about a company called Xanadu.
Yes, you probably did. Xanadu's Aurora system. It's a really interesting development in the field. They've built what they're calling the first times modular times quantum computer that operates at room temperature. And honestly, both of those things, modular and times room temperature, are pretty significant.
Okay, hold on. Room temperature? I always picture quantum computers in these gigantic, super-cooled contraptions, like something out of a spy movie, needing temperatures close to absolute zero, right? All gleaming metal and frost.
Exactly. That's the common approach using superconducting qubits. They need incredibly low temperatures, fractions of a degree above absolute zero, to maintain their delicate quantum state. And that requires complex, expensive, power-hungry cooling infrastructure. Think massive, specialized refrigerators taking up a whole room.
So Xanadu is basically ditching the industrial freezer?
Essentially, yes. They're using a different approach based on photonics. So instead of superconducting circuits acting as qubits, the basic unit of quantum information, they're using particles of light, photons.
Photons? Like the same stuff carrying our internet data in fiber optics?
Precisely the same. And that's absolutely key to the modular part. Because they're using photonics, they can leverage existing, mature fiber optic technology to connect different quantum processing units together. The Aurora system, for instance, connects 4 separate processing racks using 13 kilometers of standard fiber.
Okay, that sounds much more practical? Almost intuitive. It's like building with high-tech Lego blocks instead of trying to carve one giant, impossibly perfect sculpture.
That's a great analogy, Jenny. It allows for scaling in a potentially much more manageable way. Need more computational power? Theoretically, you add another module, connect it with fiber. It potentially addresses one of the huge engineering hurdles. How do you network these quantum processors together effectively to build bigger, more powerful systems? Xanadu's CEO, Christian Wiedbrook, has been quite vocal that photonics is inherently suited for both compute and times networking.
So if this photonic approach works at room temperature and is modular, why isn't everyone doing it? It sounds almost too good to be true. What's the catch? Or what's the advantage of those super cold, superconducting qubits then?
It really comes down to trade-offs. Like most things in technology developments, superconducting qubits, while needing that extreme cold and being perhaps harder to scale modularly, have generally been more mature in terms of key performance metrics. They've had more development time over the last couple of decades.
Okay, what kind of metrics are we talking about?
2 big ones are coherence time, basically how long a qubit can hold its quantum state before environmental noise messes it up, and gate fidelity, which is the accuracy of the operations you perform on the qubits. Superconducting systems have historically shown better results here, though photonic systems are catching up.
Okay. So the photonics approach is newer on the scene, offers potential advantages in scalability and operating conditions, but maybe still faces challenges in performance or reliability compared to the more established, albeit cumbersome, method?
That's a fair summary for now. One of the big challenges specifically for photonics, including Aurora, is minimizing optical loss. Photons can get lost or absorbed as they travel through fibers and components, and this introduces errors into the computation. Getting that loss rate sufficiently low is critical for achieving fault tolerance.
Fault tolerance. Right. That means the computer can still produce the correct result, even if there are some small errors happening along the way, because quantum states are so fragile?
Exactly. All quantum computers, regardless of the underlying technology, struggle with errors. Qubits are incredibly sensitive to noise, vibrations, temperature fluctuations, stray electromagnetic fields, You name it. So building systems that can detect and correct these errors without disturbing the computation itself is arguably time's biggest challenge for the entire field right now. Alongside scaling up the number of high-quality qubits, the research paper on Aurora mentions they use specific error-correcting codes, but they acknowledge needing about a 20% improvement in reducing optical loss to reach the theoretical threshold needed for fault tolerance with their current architecture.
Wow, okay. So it sounds like a marathon, not a sprint, on multiple fronts, improving the qubits, scaling them up, and times figuring out the error correction. Given these significant hurdles but also the potential, what does this mean for people looking at this from an investment perspective? It still feels very speculative.
It certainly is speculative, Jenny, no doubt about it. We're still in the early stages. But the potential payoff is enormous, which is why there's so much interest. That research report you might have seen cited a McKinsey projection, potentially a $2 trillion economic impact by 2035 from quantum technologies across various sectors. When you see numbers like that, investors pay attention, especially when milestones like Aurora demonstrate tangible progress.
2 times trillion? Okay, yeah, that number definitely gets attention. So what are savvy investors looking for in this space? It can't just be about flashy hardware announcements, right?
Right. They're looking for companies that are realistically tackling those two core challenges we discussed, scalability and times fault tolerance. It's not enough to just build more qubits. They need to be high-quality, well-connected qubits with a plausible, demonstrable path towards error correction. We see established players like Rigetti and IonQ making strategic moves, often focusing on specific qubit modalities or architectures. But there's also a growing ecosystem of startups focusing on enabling technologies, things like specialized cryogenic systems for the superconducting folks, control software, quantum networking components, or even companies purely focused on error correction algorithms or hardware.
And IonQ, I remember seeing something about them having a significant number of patents and maybe some government contracts. That seems like a positive sign in such an early-stage field.
Definitely. In this pre-commercial or early commercial phase, building a strong intellectual property portfolio and securing validation through government grants or partnerships with large enterprises is a key indicator. It signals that the technology has merit and potential pathways to market. Scope Technologies was another one mentioned in some reports, securing funding specifically for AI-driven quantum readiness tools, particularly targeting security vulnerabilities.
Ah, security. That always comes up, doesn't it? The flip side of the quantum coin, the whole quantum computers breaking existing encryption fear.
It's a serious and valid concern. The primary worry revolves around Q-Day, the hypothetical point in the future when a sufficiently large and fault-tolerant quantum computer could break the public key encryption algorithms, like RSA, that protect much of our current digital infrastructure.
Right, the stuff protecting emails, online banking, government communications.
Exactly. And even before Q-Day arrives, there's the threat often called harvest now, decrypt later.
Harvest now, decrypt later. That sounds deeply ominous. What does that actually mean?
It means adversaries, maybe state-sponsored groups or sophisticated criminal organizations, could be intercepting and storing large volumes of encrypted data today, times data that's currently secure, with the expectation that they'll be able to decrypt it years down the line once powerful enough quantum computers become available. Think long-term government secrets, sensitive corporate intellectual property, personal health records, financial data. Anything with a long shelf life.
Yikes. Okay, that's quite unsettling. So, what's being done about this? Are we just sort of waiting for the encryption sky to fall?
No, thankfully. There's a whole field of research dedicated to this called post-quantum cryptography, or PQC. Cryptographers and organizations worldwide, notably NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the U.S., have been working for several years now to develop and standardize new encryption algorithms. The goal is for these new algorithms to be resistant to attacks from both conventional computers and future quantum computers.
So it's an arms race, essentially. Build the powerful new tool, but simultaneously build the shield against it.
That's a pretty accurate way to put it. And the transition is starting. NIST has already selected the first group of PQC algorithms for standardization, and now the work involves integrating them into software, hardware, and protocols. Companies are starting to prepare too. That Scope Technologies funding we mentioned, for instance, was partly focused on tools to help organizations assess their quantum risk and plan their migration to these new PQC standards. This is especially critical in sectors handling highly sensitive, long-lived data, like healthcare or critical infrastructure.
That makes sense. But thinking beyond the security race, this feels like it could also create new divides. Who gets access to this potentially powerful technology? Could quantum computing worsen existing inequalities?
That's a really important point, Jenny, and something that needs careful consideration. There's definitely a risk that the benefits of quantum computing, faster drug discovery, better financial modeling, materials, science breakthroughs, could disproportionately favor organizations or countries that can afford the hefty R&D investment and infrastructure, ensuring equitable access, fostering education and workforce development in quantum skills globally. These are going to be vital to prevent a quantum divide. It's a societal challenge alongside the technical ones.
That's a sobering thought. Maybe something we should ask our listeners about on social media? How do they times think we can ensure quantum benefits are shared widely? It feels like a conversation worth having.
I agree. It's crucial to think about these implications early on. Because looking ahead, say, 5 to 10 years, where do I see this going beyond the security aspect?
Yeah, what excites you most looking forward?
Well, I think the hybrid approach is going to be really significant in the medium term, using quantum processors as specialized co-processors, tackling the incredibly hard parts of a problem while classical computers handle the rest. Data prep, result analysis, the workflow orchestration. We're seeing platforms like Microsoft's Azure Quantum explore this. They recently announced achieving a milestone related to logical qubits, error-corrected qubits, in collaboration with Quantinuum, which is a promising step towards more reliable quantum computation, even if the scale is still modest.
So quantum computers probably aren't replacing our laptops or phones anytime soon, but they might become powerful, cloud-accessible tools working alongside classical systems for specific, high-value tasks?
Exactly. Think drug discovery and personalized medicine, designing new materials with specific properties, optimizing complex systems like supply chains or financial portfolios, maybe even accelerating certain types of artificial intelligence research that are currently bottlenecked by classical computing limits. And Xanadu's vision, with their photonic approach aiming for million-qubit fault-tolerant systems potentially by 2029. If they manage to overcome the significant hurdles we talked about, especially the optical loss and error correction, that could provide the kind of powerful, networked backbone needed for these quantum-as-a-service offerings.
It still feels like we're right at the beginning of something potentially transformative. From room temperature photons in systems like Aurora to the global race for quantum readiness and post-quantum security. It's a complex picture, Mark.
It is. But the progress is becoming more tangible now. We're moving, step by step, from purely theoretical physics experiments in university labs to actual engineered systems being built by companies, tackling specific, hard problems. We're still in the early innings, maybe the second or third inning, but the game is definitely underway. It's an exciting time to watch this space evolve.
It certainly is. Well, Mark, thanks for breaking down Xanadu's Aurora and navigating the wider quantum landscape for us. It's complex stuff, but truly fascinating to think about.
Always happy to nerd out about it, Jenny. There's always something new happening. Always another challenge to figure out.
And maybe we'll get some interesting listener thoughts on that accessibility question. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another deep dive into the world of tech. Until then, stay curious.